My name is Anton, and we are going to discuss today infrastructures. It's one of the most important social topic, both for our city and for other cities in the world. It's the kind of a component that's decisive for the quality of life of people, and for Russia, this issue is especially critically. We have seen that in the last 15 years, its federal investments were growing both into the engineering, into the transportation infrastructure, into the social infrastructure. At the same time, the problems not only fail to disappear, but the challenges are more even serious nowadays. Traffic and hold-ups, they are topical. The engineering infrastructure, it is depreciated, and there is another situation we have run into. New developing projects are lacking investments from the state structures, especially engineering and transportation infrastructures are suffering. There are many situations when a building has been built, but there is no normal road running towards it, and it could, for example, get power only for backup or temporary electrical power network or something like this, because they can't hook it to the main lines. And it's always very important to listen to our citizens regarding what they are thinking about. I would like to introduce our participants to you. It's my pleasure to welcome Mr. Semenenko. He represents the Guildium of Developers, and he represents not only business but the federal power. Felix Karmazinov, Director General of Vodokanal St. Petersburg. It's the organization investment project of which has become an example not only for Russia but for many foreign countries who are in the in the transitional period of the economic. Mr. Sivaev, Higher School of Urbanistics and Economics, and he is head of the Center for Investments into Project. Madam Bulgakova, she is head of the Department Bank of Moscow that is in charge of cities development. Rafael Menchemes is here as well, and our esteemed guest. And these organizations, they are carrying out here the projects that impact directly the quality of life. And this is Mr. Osipov, of course, who is here. And I think we should start with discussing the state-private partnership. We are sure now that we will not be able to resolve the infrastructural problems without enjoying investments from the private sector, which are necessary to resolve the challenges that we are facing. Another thing is that private investments, they are decisive for improvement of the efficacy of the infrastructural projects. So that's why it seems to me that our discussion today is to be organized around discussing the following: how to improve the efficacy of the implementation of the infrastructure project using as part of this area state government, or in other words, state and private partnership. I would like to invite our first a speaker who will be dwelling on systemic problems, and will have a review of all the aspects that are associated with the area in our country. Again, we're going to speak about social engineering, transportation, infrastructure. It's Mr. Moskovский, you're welcome. Just my main task is to emphasize key issues important for our further discussion, and of course I'll provide you with my views and my opinion. First thing that we should remember about infrastructure, it's not the only one and main target. It's a tool that helps us to support the quality of life. If we speak about city infrastructure, we should think about the utilities, which is a blood circulating system, transportation, and social infrastructure that could be compared with a nervous system. For the city to be healthy, we should take care of the key organs that are again very decisive for the city. We have inherited quite good infrastructure. It's expensive, it's consuming capitals, but it is working still. Surprise, surprise. When answering the question what to do with infrastructure, I would like to say that the task of modernizing infrastructure is more important than the task of creating and developing infrastructure. I will dwell on the both points, but we keep saying that we pay more than all other people all over the world, the civilized people. We pay too much because it's not efficient, it's not and it leaves much to be desired. Traditional sources that used to be applied, well, we can't use them, only them, because we have to look for alternative ways. Alternative ways are clear now, they have been defined. It's because there is public sector, there is private schemes, and it is considered that something should be found in between them. It's a state-private partnership. There are many arguments that show that this approach actually comprises a number of drawbacks, but I think that it's quite fair to consider this concept, and we should look how to ensure, how to implement this thesis, this concept. What is important apart from the above? My view is as follows, that utilities are to be engineered, designed, projected. It should work in the worst conditions, which will not happen, like spaceship, you know. For example, heating system, and we designed it for -41, and it was 100 years ago. We should develop the system in such a way that if all the taps are open, the water should run. It's criteria of max impact under the worst possible conditions. What are the tasks? In brief, and we have delineated them here. Transportation. This infrastructure, it's very important that priority should be not with the road building efforts. It has never resolved problems in other city. Optimization of traffic and other approaches. Utilities, improvement of efficacy, reliability, how to do it, that's the question. And social infrastructure, quite a banal thing. It's accessibility and so and provision of high-quality services, tools. main tool or tools. It's subjective. We are lacking budget money. It's not easy to find private investments as well, but the main task is to set up conditions that would be attractive for the private business. The international practices show that municipal utilities could be attractive for the structures that are involved in diversification of money. It's because of low risks. Why there are not that high risks here? It's guarantee of that everything will be purchased, and it's about long money. How much is going to be? Because tariff, it's not about prices. It's about it's not about market. It's indices of the quality of contracts and agreements. If we know the costs, if we know other components, we can minimize risks easily. And if we speak about state-private partnership, we could think about situation when first we provide quality of services using private money, the payment according to the higher prices as an instrument for returning money. So this is the main target, probably, if we think about development of the municipal utilities. Restrictions. When we speak how we are going to return private money, we should state that if it's about transportation and social areas, it's budget, because it's direct budget responsibility, utilities, it's payments of future consumers, future tariffs. Utilities, this infrastructure, the most risky segment of the city infrastructure, they still are breathing, they are alive, but under the threat or facing the threat of catastrophes, we should understand that the dynamics of accidents is going up, and there is another restriction at 80% of utility sector, they work with a negative result of budget. They will not be attractive for the private investors. They are in debt, all of them, and this is about politics. Why are we facing this level of political component here? There is opinion that we pay for utilities more than civilized European countries. It's not true, and I'm responsible for this. It's true maybe for heating, electricity, and so on. This just common, basic services. We pay same portion of our income as they in the European countries. But if we think about dwelling, it's not true. There in the Europe, it's 50 to 50. It's 50 for services they pay, and 50 for dwelling. We pay 20% for dwelling for residential spaces. We do not support it. That's why their electricity consumption is completely different from Europe here, including Scandinavian countries. If we speak about policy here, there is another objective to shift the trend. We should increase the energy efficacy, and then we'll pay less. But the prices, the costs for consumer should be adequate. We have amendments in our law, but the new law regarding with its amendments say nothing about improvement of efficacy. of our consumption and services. Speaking about restrictions, and if we speak about the tools, these practices in the area of the state-private partnership, they show there are two trends. Politics call on us to develop concessional agreements, contracts, and the law is being improved in this area. We have several hundreds of such agreements. They have been concluded as the agreements on intentions, because there was no money at the background. Because we can face the situation when there are obligations and no money. So our concession agreements, they were about such intentions. So, for example, pumping station, it is decided to build it, but how to do it, how to return money, nothing used to be spelled out. Now the situation is changing. The main parameters of tariff leverages will be under discussion. It will improve the cash flow and will improve the situation in the municipal utility sector. Extensive development tasks here. What to do with the residential houses building? Who is going to pay for the expansion of the utility infrastructures? It's important because here the decisions that are being taken, they are lacking a real content, which turns the situation into a real chaos. A classical answer is those who is beneficiary should pay, which means that the consumer, not the consumer, those who buy apartments through paying for their builders for the actions and activities that are necessary to hook new buildings, for example, to their existing networks. There are two approaches. Maybe the builder, to say, pays trying to cover the costs, or there is kind of a pool of when the builder pays for the load that is being formed. Doesn't matter whether your building is far to the networks or not very or close to it. Does not mean it means nothing. You pay what you should pay, and there is a particular responsible for the pool pays for it. Another approach is associated with the developing, and it's about the access to the long, so to say, territory, and you pay for the load only. Our legislation actually is screwing up everything. It's existing consumer and new consumers are to pay, and we have two levels of tariff hookings now. Let's say when you have to pay both for the load and the new networks if they are longer. It's apart from the norm. You have to cover the physical costs of the networks. I know many developers. Well, very often you pay for everything because your facility is not in the program, and you have to pay for everything. It's a very serious. Well, it's a kind of a legal mess. And the analysis of this problem and should be more clear. Those who build, the primary thing is understanding how much should be paid at the stage when decision is being taken.
And here we have huge problems, taking into account the time factor. Because I'm running out of my time, I would like to say that taking into account all the complications of the infrastructure development, but certain practices exist, both positive and negative ones. Though the Moscow transportation policy is quite dubious, I assess it as positive because the paid parking in the center of the city, for me, is the main factor. It improved the Moscow traffic very significantly. In terms of municipal utilities, there are many anecdotes. I'm not going to tell them because there's no time, but until there will be no money in the concession agreements, these agreements will be empty. There should be contractual tariffs in the concession agreements from my point of view, because concession means competition for the market. The public authorities may set up start or initial conditions, and then the competition or tender has to give an answer. If anybody can resolve these issues cheaper, let them do it. So this is a competitive price for the market for a certain time, but our officials don't want to understand this. They want to control things, and they want to be included into these processes as a third party, not as one of the parties of the agreement. And these risks may be covered only or secured only by the money. So this is an issue of price. And I think that the social aspect is very important. My company is now conducting a construction project of kindergartens in accordance with the BOLT mechanism. Under the agreement with the local authorities, the kindergartens are being built as private property, and municipalities are buying out as in the form of rental payments in installments these kindergartens. We are implementing this huge project nowadays in Astrakhan region. And just a few words of advertising. I'm working in the Federal Center of Project Financing, and the task of our organization is to prepare organizational infrastructure projects, either in the PPP format or not. We deal with these tasks on a professional basis, and we have quite serious resources that we may invest on the returnable basis in terms of preparing such projects. And the task is to return these resources with a certain level of profitability at the closure level of such projects. So I have a very coupled love task. I want to say that we anyway have to find ways how to resolve such issues, and we are the company that can help you help it. And then we come to the financial closure. One of the potential customers in this story is the Bank of Moscow, to whom I'm very glad to pass the floor. But before the floor is passed, I have a small question to you. Many people speak now about the smart grid, the informational infrastructure. How can this be connected with the strategic line? You mentioned that the modernization task is more important than the task of new development. I think modernization as a word includes the notion of smart. The main, look, we have, if we speak about infrastructure, I will provide you with an example in this context. We have optimization, we have a task to optimize the infrastructure from the point of view of the supplier. For example, streamlining hydrodynamical modes of water canal, which can bring very serious decrease of tariffs. This is a smart task. And we have a huge task of smart consumption, first and foremost of heat energy. In our houses, heating is pressed-on service which we cannot control as consumers. Thus, the modernization of all the engineering networks, all the utilities, is a huge technical task that would allow to consider the real estate objects and the consumers as the same system. Felix Karmazinov has a time limit, so I will ask a question to him in order to at least listen to what he can tell us. We've just heard about some very successful projects that are being implemented in Astrakhan region in Moscow. Your company is dealing with water supply and water discharge in St. Petersburg. From your point of view, what mistakes First and foremost, of Vodokanal, which may be projected onto other companies, should be avoided in terms of implementing new projects when we modernize or reconstruct or build anew. One of the main mistakes that very often is made when implementing one project or other is striving to get an immediate result without paying attention to the expenses or the necessity to implement one measure or other. A very interesting example. We have done really quite a lot in order to develop the sewage and water supply system of St. Petersburg, but we can't stand still. I think we have managed to go along 50% of the way, and then we had to decide where to go further, which results to achieve for the second part of the way. One of the main aspects is the creation of the scheme of water supply and sewage. We have worked on this scheme for 4 years, and when we say scheme or diagram, it doesn't mean a drawing with blue lines of water supply and yellow lines of sewage. This is a very serious document. A huge document that big from the level of the floor. So this document was approved by the government of St. Petersburg, and this is one of the main stages of its development. Today we are finalizing the investment program. We are going to bring it to the government either end of September or beginning of October, and the financial framework that would secure the implementation of all the measures. This is the basis, and then we start moving forward and implement all the stages of the scheme, the schedule, investment programs, financial models. Any other way would be non-optimal. Felix Vladimirovich, from your point of view, what is the reasonable level of flexibility of these investment programs? Because we understand that a project that is 5 years old very often cannot meet all the new challenges of the economy and the development that have come to life. Thank you for your good question. You are absolutely right. What could be considered modern 5 years ago is outdated today. That's why the implementation of any scheme, of any investment projects, we have to differentiate two things here: the goal that you achieve with this project and the ways by which you are going to implement one or other point of the investment program. What did we take as the basis when we created the investment program and schedule? The decrease of all natural parameters that constitute the cost. Why natural? Unfortunately, it is very difficult to forecast what will be the tariff for electric power in 2 or 3 years, but we can already forecast and guarantee that we will decrease the energy consumption. I may say that we have come very clearly to the opinion that the integral parameter of the well-being of any working system of water supply or sewage is the specific weight of electric power in the cost of 1 cubic meter of water. It covers all aspects possible. As of today in St. Petersburg, the specific weight of electric power in the cost is 80%. In Russia and in the West, from 20 to 30, but 8% is not a limit. We think that when we implement our program, we will be able to achieve 4% maximum. This would be a good optimum that would allow us to think that things are okay with the cost. Great, thanks. We will have questions in the second part, but Felix Vladimirovich is going to leave, so a very short question to him. microphone is not working. Using this opportunity, I would like to ask a very simple question. We've discussed the strategy for St. Petersburg Development 2030, and I've noticed a very interesting thing in one of the tables. By 2030, all the parameters of the infrastructure are going to grow. In terms of water, there was minus 30%. Can you explain, please? I can thank you for this good question as well. If you allow just 2 minutes of retrospective explanations. 20 years ago, St. Petersburg consumed 3.5 million cubic meters of water per day, or 24 hours. The investment program was set up that envisaged the increase of capacities of water supply and sewage stations up to 7 million cubic meters per 24 hours, because 3.5 didn't cover the deficit. The cost of that program in terms of today money was about 100 billion US dollars. You understand that that was a real chimera, and nobody would be able to implement it. So we set a task to make water consumption in the city optimal. What is an optimal option? It may be different for various cities, but it is from 100 to 120 liters per capita per 24 hours. So today we have 147, not 3.5 million per 24 hours consumption. And we think 147 is still a lot for the city, taking into account that we have no complaints that people lack water. We think that 110, 115 liters per capita per 24 hours will be the norm for St. Petersburg. Why I was telling all this? We've made this investment program very realistic. It's not 100 billion US dollars. It is much more reasonable. We are not going to build additional water stations. And that's the answer for your question. Are you satisfied? Thank you. Did you have a question as well? Not into the microphone. You've mentioned the fact that there are no complaints in terms of water supply. Look, new houses, everything is okay in terms of calculations, connections, but on the 8th and 9th floor, when you open the tap, there's no water. When you try to make head or tail, you find out that there's no mistake. But there are 3 filters in every flat, because the quality of water is very bad, so we need 3 filters. Until we have such a bad water, your norms won't be operationable. You know, this is the problem of the builders. When the president complained in terms of the bad quality of water, this is a problem of using black pipes in the in-house networks. The red or yellowish-red water in our taps is just the problem of the internal in-house piping. And this is a national problem. This is a question to the developers. We have to move to the state-of-the-art technologies in terms of water supply inside the houses. The microphone is not on. I understand that this is not our blame, but we are trying to help the citizens who find themselves in such a situation, and usually in 2 weeks we reach success. I will pass along you. Please put down the address you've mentioned, and I guarantee that in 2 weeks the water will be okay. a good answer, and that's a good lesson for all the managers. Irina Alexandrovna, it is not very easy to make a presentation after such a presentation, but you also have an experience of implementing different projects. I have in my presentations a lot of water supply and sewage systems, so we'll try not to repeat this. This is just a short illustration of what we were talking about today, speaking about the infrastructure, communal infrastructure. There's a lot of problems connected with depreciation, how we are evaluated, connected with the fact that the cities are changing a lot, changing to the best very often, and the so-called load centers are changing in terms of water, including the problem, a good problem of water saving that brings to the fact that we have to have less water supply structures, but it brings to energy consumption because we have to change some structures. It seems that there should be a lot of projects, but there are certain limitations, and I would like to mention them in order for all of us to understand how to work with these limitations. It's not by accident that in the project that was mentioned by the previous speaker, only 25% of infrastructural projects have been implemented in the city because they are funded with great difficulty. Budget funding would never suffice for such projects. Most of the enterprises find themselves in very bad financial situation. Not an easy situation with the suppliers of municipal utilities, and it is impossible to forecast the distribution. If you look at any communal enterprise, you see a very big accounts returnable, which you can't explain, and we see a lot of litigation cases, and any banker looking at such a picture would never have a courage to deal with such an enterprise. And the lack of long-term tariff regulation up to recent time. There's no good practices nowadays on how to resolve these issues. That's the structure of payments that exists as of today. And the difference between the economically substantiated tariff and the actual one certainly has its consequences on our enterprises, and there's no plans for long-term development connected with the development of the city infrastructure, because the connection tariffs or long-term tariffs are on all big enterprises. We have a big enterprise with 322 sources of heat, and he has to change one of them. And when we ask them what's going to happen with the enterprise tomorrow, they do not know, because the plans that exist, like for example in Vorkuta, I've seen an example that though the city is actually dying, but they have a plan of massive development for the near few years. The plans very often are compiled in such a way that when you look at them in greater detail, you stop trusting them, and you want to have a guarantee from the budget for any project.
And speaking about the key projects in connection with the challenges, I'm dwelling on how the projects are being implemented. Many of them are enjoying co-financing from the budget and from banks. When the tariffs do not work completely, let me give you an example. When there is a budget support, it's possible to implement. We know about such projects where agreements with the foreign financial institutions, 50% was given by the bank for in Berdira, for example, 5 or 7 years before return. Внешэкономбанк, represented by Sergei, maybe they will not be able to work under this scheme, but as financial institute is necessary, not just a commercial bank. We are in need of such a financial institute, because a bank can't wait for 70 years. All projects should be split into several stages. We have problems in the area of documentation development, and Sergei is an example. His structure is a very good example, but it's not possible to continue without a delineated system for development of proper documentation. For infrastructure projects to be able to work, it's just necessary in long-term tariff regulation. Someone should be brave and pass to it. Long-term tariff, only one, was adopted last year in the city where there's a threat to stay without water at all. There are very many promises, but right now, but no decisions. And as an example, what has been done, what is going to be done. In Vladivostok, we have a very good problem implemented together with Voda Canal. It was not perfect, maybe. Actually, major financial support was from the budget. There was a quite impressive sum. It was spent for treatment plant, and part of the project was implemented, but happily we allocated credit for Primorsky Voda Canal. It will be covered in a couple of years' time. Hope everything will be completed and it will exist. There are different projects. They are there in place. There are roads, there are parks, there are other things that were financed through this scheme. It was not easy, and its bank allocate money in a year time, and its core executor, but they need time to analyze. Would be preferable to have their solution in 3 weeks, but well, we have to improve our legislation framework. The policy should be clear. Plans for development of municipal hubs, plans for development of the facilities that are in charge of utilities. The plan should be a real, feasible plan. Everything should be understandable. Why, when, and so on. We know the statistics regarding water supply. Execution is 25%, and it's great. Quite often it's 10-12%. I mean, implementation of what has been planned. We can't but develop such plans because the law obliges us to do this, but such plans, they do not work as tools. So we have to bring closer together theory and practical life. And if we say here we plan to build this or that facility, and banks should be informed about it, and it means that we could participate. So unrealistic plan is a deadlock. I'm in agreement with you, but what should be done in your view so that regions and regional developers be sure that in their territory, for example, there will be developed and there will be used a realistic plan, open, transparent plan, a plan that will not be serving the interests of some, let's say, not very transparent businesses. We know what plans I'm talking about. They are under discussion, and I'm not interested in the plan for St. Petersburg, but there are common social aspects in all our plans. If a plan has not been implemented, it should be reconsidered. But what problems are we talking about? Designers, what could be said about independent of auditors? Yes, the problem is there. High-quality designers, they are available when there is an order, procurement order. There are designers, but our designing bureaus quite often they work about confirmation. Previously, first it was exploration regarding, for example, a future consumption of electricity. Then infrastructure was to be designed. Today, according to the rules of designing, the designers ask municipality to provide them with the information, and they often do not check the information. It's about responsibility of each designer who takes part, and we are lacking such responsibility. My question is to Vyacheslav Chupunenko. Vyacheslav has very good experience both in private business and in management of the very responsible building projects here, and he participated in development of standards and regularities, as far as I understand, in the area of electricity consumption and provision. Yes, regional and methodological document for energy saving was developed, and we were to develop a number of schemes that could be useful for inspection, for reviewing, for supervision, and we developed actually 8 institutions participated, and it is available. It has been approved previously. If there was estimation, a particular estimation, the reviewers, supervisors, they asked to provide complete estimation for complete load. Today, according to this document, with its help, we could optimize energy consumption and to pay less for technical conditions, but engineers show how it's possible to reduce costs, and our colleagues from the Netherlands actually liked it very much. It could be applied, this document, in the process of designing. This approach is possible. I would prefer to dwell on the social infrastructure. I know lots and lots of it from my experience. Schools, nursery schools, outpatient hospitals, others. When we were building the schools, for example, we were not very interested at first what was going on in other countries. Then we became interested in it, and we considered what is going in Finland. The best Finnish school that was awarded particular prize as the best one, we saw that it's 1.6 smaller for the same number of pupils. So they had to resolve the same task, but they pay 1.6 less. A nursery school, kindergarten, same situation. In Finland, regarding the quality of services, it's very high, but it's from the point of view of dimension, the nursery schools are smaller. They do not economize on open spaces for children, but sport facilities in our country according to our standards, state standards that are decisive for the type of construction, and just the simplest sport facility is 3 times more expensive here. So our national economy spends 2-3 times more, or as much as in Finland. Hospitals, clinics, our senior physicians, they are repeating that, please, could you build a clinic for Western technologies according to our regularities? And it's very difficult to do anything because medical facilities, they are described very precisely and rigidly. I'm talking about federal norms. It's almost no way out. We reproduce technologies from the previous century, but technologies are different, different equipment, and the technology of the services is different, and doctors are spending lots and lots of time at the international conferences. They have knowledge and skills. They come here and they realize that the facilities do not meet the international standards. What is happening there? Actually, we inherited the network of social facilities from the Soviet times, and they were adequate from the last century. For those times, we had adequate transportation system, we had very good network for social provision. There were no commercial infrastructure, but even shops were built adequately. And speaking about medical services, we were criticizing the Western countries in the Soviet years. And we used to say and joke that if you are in the Western countries and you are in the hospital, they will put 10 layers of ointment on your burn. And we were joking that they in the Western countries, they were just thick. But now they have medical modules in Scandinavian countries, in mobile light modules. What do? They provide accessibility. It's family doctor, general practitioner decide about whether you are in need of specialized care. 2 beds there. They could give you injections if you have high blood pressure, so on. It's 2 beds could be arranged in a van. It's very simple, very useful. Family doctors are very efficient in St. Petersburg. It's known, so this practice should be supported, and we should use it as a platform for modernizing of medical facilities. We could speak on the culture and cultural facilities. There is transportation, so on and so forth, but cities could provide diversity of options, and from this point of view, we can't forget about culture and should think about the tools for development. But it's not because yesterday it was better, it's just specificity of targeted programs, education, medicine, and sports. I do not mean roads, it's a different branch. Culture is number 4, and then demands are number 5. Safe, militia, police, it could be firefighters, and so on. And of course, where are we supposed to develop cultural facilities? Should we do it in the districts where people live only in the downtown. Another example from Finland. A new district is under development not far from Helsinki. There is a trading center and there is a modern library there, but their library and our libraries are absolutely different. Library there is a center of public life, a public space, a place where people are getting together and when they are reading. Another technology, not just shelves. We describe other cities, other people. They were born with computers. They are not that efficient in reading hard copies or paper books. My children, I'm not quite sure. I do not know what they read. In my understanding, they read nothing. But in the Western countries, they recognized the problem and they attract people to the libraries. They call it the library, but it's not a library in our understanding. So this combination of things, development of network for social provision, we should at last find a place, such a place to which you send, to where you send your document, and at least you get a response. Now we have sanitary norms, we have other regulatory norms, Ministry of Medicine, other ministries, and they are discussing the development of technologies, but we pay 3 times as they pay in Europe for the same services, and the quality of life we consider is good there. And Finland, they are our neighbors, but they are first in the international ratings. We pay too much. Does not matter where money comes from target programs or private money, whatever. This money could be used for something else, for a new park, for planting trees, or for roads, whatever, for other demands, for parking spaces. We overpay, and the developers, poor developers, and I feel pity for the foreign developers that start working here. First, when they come here, you should optimize everything they say. A second question from them is where to go, whom to go to, and silence. We are overregulated, and our system is developing without providing good quality, and we manage even to overpay for this. So Moscow or not Moscow, Petersburg or not Petersburg, Ministry of Construction maybe. For many years we did not have even a specialized ministry. Maybe they will become a place to which all developments could be sent. I have lots and lots of them. Calculations are ready, and there is justification which is available. It shows that, yes, it could be done like this, and developers maybe might invest in it and help to modernize our approach to the modernization of the infrastructure of our cities in the social area, for example.
A very brief question, maybe not only to you, Vyacheslav, but to other speakers. Do you know any regional examples of legislative initiatives that would regulate various aspects of infrastructure, when such initiatives would at least lead to minimal transformations of all our troubles? I know, but unfortunately it happened in Moscow. So all our subjects are equal, but there are some who stand higher or have higher positions. Thank you. You will still have time for questions. Now we have the last very brief presentation. Alexei Razumov deals with a very specific infrastructural project in the sphere that some 10 or 15 years ago was not even in the focus of attention of not only the city authorities, but the public and the developers as well. So I pass the floor to Alexei, and we would like to know what happens with the cycling system or cycling infrastructure. I want to tell you about the experience of such implementation of project in terms of alternative public transport. Cycle rent. I want to correct Anton, who said that some 10-15 years ago it didn't exist, but the first public cyclic rental system existed 20 years ago. First, it was founded in Amsterdam and existed only for 3 months. All their bicycles were stolen in these 3 months, but fortunately, this was not the last attempt to implement such a project. And as of today, there is a system in the world that amounts more than 60,000 bicycles. The biggest system exists in Asia. They have a very topical problem of moving along any big city, so they have to resolve this issue in such a way. If it's anytime you go to Hanzhong, you will find yourself in a real river of cyclists, a very saturated traffic, but the number of cycling trips per one person is not as big. The leaders in this case Holland, where 30% of all trips are carried on by bicycle. Copenhagen, also Strasbourg, 9%, Barcelona, 6%. In London, in spite of the fact that they have implemented a very large-scale system, they achieve only 2%. They have some nuances because they have not so many cycle tracks. The implementation of all these projects loses its meaning without their comprehensive implementation together with their cycle tracks. It may be compared to buying a tram without building tram tracks. If you do not have cycle tracks, you have to move around on a bicycle in a very aggressive traffic because the cyclist moves with 15 kilometers per hour and he has to think about the pedestrians and the cars. Thus, without the cycle tracks, this transportation means is only for the young people. More than 70 systems of bicycle rent exist in the world. I was the participant of the implementation of the first pioneer project of such a system in Moscow, and also in 2014, another one in 2014 in St. Petersburg. I want to tell you about the Moscow experience. Initially, the Moscow project was considered for 2,000 cycles. It was launched as a pilot one in order to evaluate how much this service will be in demand among the residents of the city. Fortunately, other projects have been carried out in Moscow at the same time, aimed to optimize the traffic flows, payment parking lots, very significant introduction of significant fines for incorrect parking of cars, which helped to improve the traffic in Moscow. It became much better. The project was called Velobike. And in 2013, when we implemented the pilot project, we had more than 40,000 users in 4 months of its functioning. Unfortunately, the project was launched only in mid-June, and the spring months were not covered. The cycling season is a limitation that exists in our heads. If we look at our neighbors, the Finns, they have cities in which the cycle rent, for example, in Koulu, a small city that is located in the north, but 40% of all the trips in the summertime and approximately the same amount of trips in the wintertime go by bike. They have a lot of cycling tracks. They're being cleaned in the wintertime. and it is possible to cycle along them. Similar projects may be implemented in Russia. Take Montreal, that is located at the same approximately latitude as St. Petersburg, and they have one of the most successful cycling projects in the world. So back to Moscow, 40,000 trips, as I've said, very positive response on the side of the residents to this project, and within the framework of the Federal Law 44, we have signed a contract with the city to implement a larger scale project, 5,000 bicycles. The largest cycle rent is in Paris with 20,000 bicycles, but they have a very high rate of vandalism. They have a very interesting model of funding for the project. It is funded by at the expense of the GCCOM global company, and since they have very strong globalistic moves in the society, people have their revenge. So in the first few months of implementation of this project, around 30% of the bicycles have been damaged, and certainly with very negative consequences. I'm sorry, but we are much limited in time. I would like to bring the discussion back to the focus of St. Petersburg or Moscow. In St. Petersburg, this is a private project without the state funding. Both the Moscow and the international experience shows that state funding is needed for large-scale or just as a support. Let's suppose that we want to stimulate people to swap their own cars in favor of public bicycles. In order to stimulate people, we have to introduce certain measures so that it will be more beneficial to them to use public transport. And, for example, in New York, very expensive cycle rental costs $150. In Moscow, their annual card costs 150 rubles, and in St. Petersburg a bit more. This is connected with the tariff for public transport, and since we have to introduce such tariffs, we can't cope with large-scale projects. All the projects that exceed 300 bicycles that are being implemented as private bicycle rental, they usually are limited and funded from the municipal budget. Thank you, Alexei. Now we pass over to Q&A. But first, I want Boris, as the first-line expert, to express his comments in terms of infrastructure. Maybe just 1 or 2 minutes. Any questions from the floor? Infrastructural questions. You're welcome. In the spring of this year, there was a similar town planning conference in the headquarters opposite the Winter Palace, and infrastructural questions were raised there as well. I was present there, and also I listened there for 2 hours how we need cycle tracks. Is it the main problem in the city? Why nothing was said about the fast tram? Why nothing was said about collapse, about the embankments that need to be modernized for pedestrians, and allocating public space? We spend a lot of time for cycle tracks that would be working only 3 months a year, and you even mentioned budget funding for this. We have dedicated only the last 10 minutes for cycle tracks, but I think that we may avoid answering this question because it was mentioned that cycle tracks is also a contribution to combating cars, the same as public transport, but we don't have city authorities here. If we discuss various aspects, including cycle tracks, for 5, 10, 20, 30 hours, only by such expert discussions, we can achieve the fact that various innovative approaches will be implemented in the city management. Next time we will take this into account. The question was not into the microphone, but the transport is such that we can speak about cycle tracks in various aspects. Any other questions? Boris. My name is Boris Vishnenkov. I'm the coordinator of the Public Platform Project. Thank you for the opportunity to express my thoughts. It will be my thoughts, really. I'm not an expert in terms of engineering or social infrastructure, but it seems to me that the infrastructure of the city notion may include what worries me and other members of the platform. Maybe part of the city's infrastructure should be the infrastructure of the public discussions as well, the bottom-up thing, what you mentioned now as well. If we consider this as a constituent part of the city infrastructure or the mechanism of wording and generating proposals from the bottom, from the citizens who are indifferent to what the city is all about. So if such infrastructure exists, we would manage better to see where the main concerns are, or cover more effectively the problems that exist and propose solutions for them. So maybe we should consider public self-governing as part of infrastructure, municipal governance also. We now deviate more to the politics, but we are lacking this a lot. We lack pedestrian embankments and cycle tracks, but we also lack the vector that was on Anton's one of Anton's slide with the circle and arrows from the bottom. This is also part of the city's infrastructure. Your questions, please. Questions or comments? Mikhail Gorimykin, the Union of Gardeners of Russia. My question is, where is the border of the city, where the infrastructural projects should stop? Where should water piping stop and forests start? So, the city of St. Petersburg of tomorrow, where is it? The Union of Gardeners is working now in the Leningrad region. We have 2,500,000 citizens who move every day from this nice city to the place where there are no roads, no sewage, no running water, no public transport. How is going St. Petersburg develop further in accordance with various districts, or following the movements of each and every citizen who are moving from their comfortable flats to a very uncomfortable situation in the region? So you speak about tomorrow and the tools of positive changes. I think these tools should answer the question how the citizens are living outside the border of the city as well. Okay, thank you. I think that this question, as well as the question about the transport, is a certain message to the event that certainly will take place in St. Petersburg, I'm sure. And I am ready to give you only 1 minute for your comment. Thank you. Vladimir Yevseyev, and I represent the Union of Industrialists and Entrepreneurs of St. Pete. I would like to touch upon two issues in continuation of what was said by Mikhail. Certainly, the city is tightened spatially, and the development of new territories is very problematic. But we have a very interesting area, and we are discussing it with the government of the Leningrad region, the creation of agglomeration, the proximity and bringing together of the programs for development. This is a very perspective way and a very strategic one. Unfortunately, in the 2030 strategy, in which I acted as an expert, and my conclusion was mainly negative. Unfortunately, they pay very little attention to this issue, but this is the future of our city. Also, such a complex system as our city should develop and function in accordance with certain laws, among which is the balancing of expenses and functions and expenses of various elements of this infrastructure. As a representative of the industrial community, production, trade and retail, education and culture, and the population that migrates within the circle of all the elements of this system. Nowadays, this balancing is not considered and is not observed. Together with Anton, we took part in many of similar events, and I like the systemic approach very much. But please envisage for this balancing, because only your organization as a systemic organization can provide developments for the government. We are interested in the elements of our infrastructure, but we can only propose things. And one more issue, 5 seconds only. I won't fit into 5 seconds. Maybe then next time. Okay, I'm ready to provide a very systemic list of proposals, and I'm grateful for everybody who really is concerned by our city. Thank you very much. So we are finishing up and just wrapping up. I think we had a very interesting question. Where is the end of the city? There is a theoretical answer. The city ends in the place where the weekly migrations are significant. So parks are included. Another important aspect, Big Paris includes 20 municipalities. Washington D.C. is not the city that is Washington with 2 states, and lots of similar examples. New Moscow is now, they are now building underground to New Moscow, but not to Mytish or Balashikha, where the transport load is much higher. When we speak about the St. Pete and Leningrad region, we are always thinking how to unite them, but nobody is doing this. Everybody is doing horizontal links and compromising. We do not have any culture like this at all. We are thinking first about administrative steps, hoping for the best. And the lack of such culture of finding horizontal links and compromises is a great problem for the development of our agglomeration. And this is a topic for future discussion for sure, but I just wanted to mention it. As summing up, I think it would be very important to show the results of sociological questionnaire, because we speak a lot about the opinion of the population, and we ask the question, should St. Petersburg look for new formats of building buildings when creating new schools, or use the standard buildings? And you see more than half of the population strive for innovations. From my point of view, this is very symptomatic that not people, but our city authorities follow old logics, more conservative, and this is a very serious challenge, and the city community has to use all its potential, the public position, in order to influence the authorities and make them act more innovatively and not to follow templates.